Lux, Anguis here. Today's topic will be about ancestors and your current problems. As of usually, I start with an example of a story. Because of my developed psychic senses, I can to day-to-day witnesses, experience and also look upon different kind of spiritual manifestations and phenomena. And what I have found is very profound. For example, I have witnessed right now by a significant other in my family that, one day the person just came home and just was hungry as F, hungry as fuck, really like they want to eat the world, something like that. And when they passed me, I literally saw many layers of dark energies emitting from their spine. And I just analyzed it for a bit. I just looked upon it for a bit and I just like digested and felt this whole information from where this came from. And instinctually I knew this came from the ancestors. Because what I know is your spine, your spinal cord is connected to your, not only to your Kundalini force, not only to your energy channels and centers, it's also very much connected as the essence of your ancestors. And the spine is very much one of the main organs or main bodily functions or manifestations where your ancestors are stored in, energetically speaking. And then I just saw like waves of black energies emitting from it, like layered like an onion. You can envision like, for some creepy reasons, your own spine, your own skeletal structure of your spine is in the water, and when it moves, it emits waves. It emits many types of waves. But instead of water waves, it is black energy waves. It just felt very influenced. It just felt very manipulated. It just felt very bound to it. And I just thought about it because in my family there are many people who are overweight. There are many people who are overweight. And of course there are not only the modern problems from it. If you're thinking back in time, our older generations didn't have that much food to eat, didn't have that much of a wealthy and luxurious upbringing or material circumstances that we have right now, So I think some of our ancestors who lived near poverty or lived in poverty, who had seldom a full stomach, had seldom to eat, and died with this trauma, died with this impression, and they didn't move on in the afterlife, because this happens a lot, because many of our ancestors, many of our spiritual relatives don't do any spiritual practice, don't cultivate higher amounts of energies that they could use in the afterlife to move on or to reach higher levels of inner and outer circumstances. So the easiest way for our ancestors to fulfill their needs still, to fulfill their trauma, to fulfill some type of problems they had, is through their next generations, through us. That could mean that the hungry part of our ancestors still continues to live through us. So that means that some of our hungers, some of our current problems in these directions don't necessarily stem completely out of this lifetime. They can pretty much stem of our ancestors, and they are walking through us. And that's why it makes sense, that makes for me sense, culturally speaking, that in many cultures one sacrifices food, one sacrifices libations, and sometimes material stuff in combination with spiritual energies to our ancestors. Because many ancestors have still, if they didn't move on, have still a materialistic mindset, have still a materialistic impression from this lifetime they lived. So one of the fairest and easiest exchange of energies that could happen and that you could do is through food, is through material offerings to your ancestors, you know. And if your ancestors are not honored, are not given attention, they will make you to give them attention. Is most of the time it is more in a negative way, you know. Most of the time, because ancestors don't have, most of our ancestors don't have, like the recent one, the more ancient ancestors, I think most of them had a natural spiritual connection to spiritual worlds, but through progression of technology and through society and through materialism, they lost this connection to some extent. So I think that's a reason why then the ancestors that don't get any spiritual attention, don't get any libations in respect through any means, are starting to create problems through you. You know, because you are the nearest genetic replica of your ancestors. So they can work through you more directly than they would if they possess a stranger, you know. So they work through you to fulfill their unreached needs. So that's why it is a fundamental, as a beginner practitioner to some extent, to honor your ancestors, to walk with ancestors, to walk with your DNA, to transmute this lower type of energies into higher type of energies, you know. If you walk on yourself, you don't only walk on yourself, you walk also on the ancestors at the same time. And free your ancestors at the same time when you walk on yourself. But you can do it more directly if you dedicate some of your spiritual practices unto your ancestors. Be it through outer practice, you give physical libations, physical sacrifices, or through inner sacrifice, you give some mantras, some deity works dedicated to your ancestors, so they can get direct spiritual energies from you to them, and they can use to transcend their current stuck up situations and heal also themselves. And this is my perspective, that some problems are not stemming completely from you. Some problems are overwhelmingly strengthened by your ancestors' needs and by your ancestors' own traumas, you know. So you must look it upon holistically. You should not only work on yourself, which can also help your ancestors, but you should also sometimes work with your ancestors directly, because both of them can result that you, for example, just one day to another, just completely dissolve a long holding problem onto your life. When it's like literally when you walk with ancestors and they are satisfied and they are gaining a higher vibration and higher consciousness, and they out of nowhere the next day you don't have this problem of overeating anymore, then you know for sure this problem was ancestral in nature. This problem was more spiritual in nature, you know. So think about it, you know. Take it into consideration. And yeah, I think this was it what I wanted to tell you today. Other than that, Naga bless, and we shall see and hear us again.